Hi, you. This is so. Minutes. So these are the first to join. So I'm right. So we've been discussing about what is web service. So this is the agenda that we have. The series of the web services course. So we're going to learn about the web service definition. What are the advantages? What are the things that people have about web services? So services are classified. Actually, they're classified into SOAP and services. Uh, discussing a little bit about the web services. So it has something, some protocol, messaging protocol. So it's important that you understand what is XML, what is XSL, what is XPath, what is FT, what is WSDL, and what is UDDI. And that we'll be discussing SOAP or Simple Object Access Protocol, and we'll be discussing about SOA, which is actually Service Oriented Architecture. And we also just create a SOAP-based web service, the actual web service, as well as we'll create a client or Java-based client which will be consuming this web service that we have created. Okay, so this is actually the agenda we have for the course. Okay, what is so we've been discussing about what is web service. Okay, so basically, web service is nothing but a kind of web application, if you might. So the application which has been delivered over HTTP, that is transfer protocol. So HTTP is nothing new. So it has been there. Okay, so it's an existing technology, existing transportation protocol. Okay, the web services are delivered over HTTP, HTTPS. HTTPS also it's possible to expose our application as a web service also. So HTTPS is actually just adding a layer to the HTTP. Okay. It's not the first time that services has been delivered over HTTP. Okay. So we discuss is like how web service as a platform has evolved with certain steps. Okay. So we all of those. Okay. So can be program a variety of languages, old and new. So you can use even PHP, VB scripting, .NET programming languages can be used. So we'll be looking at Java services. Okay. So how do we publish a service? You basically publish it as a web action in a web server. Okay. Discuss about all these things. So we look at all things. So what service? So we move on to web service. So we'll just understand what is the need for web service. Um, there has been a shift towards distributed computing. So computing has been laid a lot of emphasis because availability of very good network. Okay, network is very good, and people started sharing application through internet. Okay, so distributed computing basically allows information processing to be shared together. Okay, so traditional distributed processing model assume that you have a common environment or an architecture and interoperability. So if you have a common environment and an architecture, is actually Java Enterprise Edition, or a common environment or architecture, right? So interoperability is actually easier to achieve. Okay, so but the problem comes when you're using different platforms. So the distributed processing, different platforms or architectures or development languages is actually very complicated. Okay, so one of the key requirement which how distributed processing using different languages that interoperability was understood to be a key in enabling distributed processing or distributed computing or sharing of information and processing. Interoperability between systems is the key, and services are basically an approach for dealing with this problem of different platforms speak to each other, or different platforms basically share the information and the processing. Okay, so basically, services was actually evolved as uh, a solution to the problems which are faced in trying to distributed processing using different forms and architecture. Okay, so it's basically evolved as a solution, or it evolved as an approach for this problem of distributing using different platforms. Okay, uh, so basically provide way to access business application logic using internet protocols. So you can use TCP, you can use SMTP, you can use even FTP. So all these different standard internet protocols can be used by web service to access the business logic or the application logic. Okay, so I'm just going to the presentation. So if you guys have any questions, you can always just stop in. Okay, so the terminologies I'm just assuming that you guys are familiar with. So if you guys are not familiar with any of the things which are there slide, so you can always stop and ask me. Okay, organizations already have these protocols, right? So they already have an infrastructure which basically supports HTTP, SMTP, and FTP, right? Organizations already have the communication software and the infrastructure required to support web services. What are web services for? So early applications like mail or websites, they all have Windows to communicate with each other. Right? So that's what this early internet applications were meant to be. So that people can speak to each other. So web services basically help applications to speak to each other. So while the early internet like HTML, browser technologies, they're all meant for people to consume and produce data and share it across, right? So, but web services are actually meant for nations to speak just the way people communicate with each other through the internet application. Okay, so this is basically interoperability across independent processing environments and domains. Okay, so what web services is meant, so it gradually evolved the solution to the problems faced by users when they're trying to enable different and built in different platforms speak to each other. Okay, so that's what web services are basically. There are a lot of advantages of using web service. So you're using web services, of course, the interaction between different company systems be enabled. Okay, so the interaction between applications inside a company be enabled by using web services. So the is actually loosely coupled. Okay, so no need for a common application environment. So you don't have to have all the applications deployed in the server or in local vicinity. So it can be distributed. So we can have the application deployed in station and some other partner different location, but still you can expect these applications to very nicely. So that's one of the advantages of using services. Okay, so you don't have to abandon the existing environment in software. So legacy applications, you don't have to completely throw away all the legacy applications. So you can do a web service front end to the existing legacy application, and you can actually go ahead and migrate to a newer technology. So if you just come across a newer technology, add more productivity to your existing applications, so completely abandoning all your existing applications. So what you get, you can add a web services front to your existing investments in software. So it will be very easy for you to plug in and create your existing applications to services compatible uh, new infrastructure. Already, all the very big players in IT like Microsoft, IBM, Sun, they're all listing in web services and they're all creating tools to support the services. That's many of the advantages of web services. Okay, just like the advantages of web services, a lot of people have some relations or they have some fear about moving to web services based technology. So people think that web services are not a proven technology. So they're not proven technology like Java, J2EE or They're not like a .NET where it has been proven over a period of time. So people think that it's just a fashionable solution of the day. So then, if the web service will work in the long term. Okay, and another fear that people have is that services or so web services especially rely heavily on XML. Okay, XML. What is wrong with XML? So XML expands the size of the data several times over. Okay, just blows up the amount of data that is expected to be communicated between the systems or HTTP. So it basically expands the size of the data several times. So even for a variable communication or request response communication, you typically expect a lot of data associated with the request and the response. It's because you're actually listening in very deep regarding each and every individual field that you have in your web services request and the response. Okay, so again, one more concern that people have about the data is that more processing is form and parse the message. There are two things. So whenever you have very huge chunk of data, so there are two things. Just to actually format your request, send it across, and the receiving system also is expected to parse the information. That is to actually decode the information which is present in the particular request, which is server. So I've seen this, you know, before of hardware, how server hardware because actually program to XML data. So it's very heavy. It's a very process intensive processing. The entire XML coding as well as and decoding is actually very process intensive. So systems might need a lot of resources, a lot of and a lot of processing power to encode and decode the XML. So it's like a additional overhead which comes at your application infrastructure if you're using source web services. One more concern that we have is that applications are now exposed to extra threats. So with web services, what you're effectively is that you're extending your applications to the outside world over HTTP protocol, right? I'm not saying it's very easy, but it's a possibility that our application might be hacked. So if people say if they get access to so it's like the effect be devastating. So a lot of people they can access a lot of information and they can manipulate even database level of information if they have access to web service. So this is actually one of the things that people fear when trying to move to web services based application infrastructure. So applications are basically exposed to external threats. So again, this can expose valuable corporate data, applications and systems because it's our HTTP. Okay, so these are the fears. So some of them were real, some of them had to be addressed. A lot of people started taking the service security pretty seriously. So there are third-party applications which will basically act as a security layer over web services when you're exposing them to the a lot of 11 is one of the companies take off your web services security. A lot of different companies, IBM and Microsoft, they all have some web security products. Okay, so one of the good solutions provider for services security is web services development tools. Okay, so we had again web service classification. So web services can be classified into two main kinds. So that is actually SOAP-based services. Yeah, hello.
Sorry, one question regarding the reservation part. I mean, the last thing, apart from the third-party things which provide security, the service doesn't have its own security thing. I mean, it cannot apply security inside the web services that these people can only access me like that. Internet can apply some security.
Yeah, actually, there is actually a separate protocol itself for security open protocols there. So XAML is one protocol. So there are user level authentication, but these open standards or open security implementation can be easily cracked The reasons why a lot of especially in your web services at an enterprise level, additional proprietary standard technologies are. A lot of people think it's better to have proprietary standards. So open standard, of course, you can have a lot of information available over the net if you want to have a open security system. But corporate security system, they don't have the kind of background to what kind of technology is involved in protective services, right? So that's why actually a lot of companies provide solutions for web security. Apart from that, web services, they also have some open standards with respect to security. User authentication is there, some kind of open mechanism, just like website and cookies. All these things are there.
Yeah, I was trying to understand. Is an authentication kind of security thing that we have, or internally you can have encryption also possible in web service? If the encryption, that is a better way of security for a system, right? Even for any application, everything is vulnerable to security. So I was just and why this became a bigger priority for web service. That's the reason.
Yeah, actually, both encryption as well as user authentication is also there. There is a separate, I think there is a separate protocol like XAML. So XAML is completely related to security, but since a lot of people not involved in development of these open security standards, so not very advanced or it's not actually mature enough to be implemented in an enterprise level software system. So
got it. Yeah, understood. One more question related to this one. First point which you mentioned, like it's not a fashionable solution. One fashionable solution of the day. So who is the real opponent or web service? That's what I'm trying to understand. Say, if people are saying that this is not good, there should be something better than that, or what do you think?
One thing is that other technologies which are there in terms of enterprise application development has been around for many years, like 20 or 30 years. So compared to that, web services has been some standard which has been evolving. So a lot of changes are happening. So especially when people banking system and all have been using some system for 30 or 40 years. So they find it a little difficult to move to new technology. So we have a lot of, so especially banking sector is one of the sector or one of the different domains which are particularly little apprehensive about moving to web services. So others like e-commerce and all, they're adapting to web services, but the legacy systems sticking on to what they've been using.
Initial technology which you mentioned that by you can have application interaction between like methods or like that. So they stick on with that technology. That's what you're saying.
That's actually they're sticking on to legacy applications itself. So they're very slowly they're moving to web services. So again, web services are evolving day by day. So whatever this having, so that there are solutions which are available, solutions are evolving to address these concerns. So these reservations are not applicable, so some of them are still applicable. So over a period of time, it's like a number of things that people commonly fear about web services. So that's what it's about.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for the questions. Somebody else have any questions or want to discuss so far? In terms of the implementation, web services can be classified into two main lines. So one is actually the SOAP web service and the RESTful web service. Okay, again, SOAP-based web services have been around for a while. So Google products have been SOAP-based web services, except for Blogger. A lot of enterprise software has been based on the SOAP-based web services. Okay, RESTful web services are which came much later to the base services. Okay, so came as a it's actually a pretty neat solution for web services. So again, RESTful is actually considered to be trendy. Okay, it supports a lot of modern protocols. Modern protocols in a sense, RESTful actually addresses a lot of concerns about the services. So a lot of people are thinking that services rely very heavily on XML, a lot of process things involved in encoding and decoding the request and responses. So it is actually something which addresses this lightweight. So it doesn't involve a lot of process intensive kind of resources for entering and decoding the RESTful request and response. So RESTful service is basically operate based on the elementary transactions. So for example, you basically have a couple of different basic transactions when you're doing processing, right? So you have create, update, delete, all these very like create, update, read. So the CRUD, right? So these basic element transaction has been exposed as services, the RESTful services. So not a lot of complicated requirements are there for RESTful services implementations. With even mobiles are adopting to RESTful services, especially Android reliably on RESTful service calls. So a lot of Android applications make a lot of RESTful service calls to the get a lot of information and processing done. So RESTfuls are which much later to so basically a lot of these applications like Yahoo, okay, uh, pubs or RESTful services, or they're all utilizing RESTful web services. Again, eBay and Amazon both use a mixture of REST-based services and based services. So again, Amazon is very well-established player in terms of services. They have very exhaustive list of services available. So anybody who is interested in create e-commerce application can very make use of this Amazon services, and they can actually enhance their website or application by using this Amazon web service. So I think you can register a developer. They support really um, development around Amazon web services. So you can register to AWS platform, and I think they provide a lot of very nice solutions for developing application support web services.
If you for enterprise level or business level, it's paid, right?
Yeah.
These services
So
from
for understanding or for learning, you can register for a free account. So if you commercialize it, or if you want to make some profit out of your application, so you will have to subscribe to them by paying some amount. Okay. So it's open source, so it's like proprietary web services. They has to kind of development language they're using. So basically, there are some web services which will help you in getting credit. So again, it's not all Amazon web services are paid services. So you're actually a retailer, and if you want to use, if you want to just provide some Amazon products in the site, there are free services which Amazon will you get it. So not everything is paid. So only if you want to commercialize a lot of on your own, so then they actually give some products and details regarding their plan and all. But I'm aware of the fact that a lot of organizations, UST has some subscriptions on web services subscription which they are using for clients. So and anyway, it's actually very useful to an Amazon website. There are some very good books and websites which have a lot of information about to use Amazon web services. Okay, so if you're interested, I can share the information offline. Okay. Okay. It originally stood for simple data access protocol. So again, because of the usage of services in service-oriented architecture, it later came to known as service-oriented architecture protocol. So fine. Okay. So AMP is a protocol for exchanging XML-based messages bureau networks. Okay. It is stood for simple object access protocol. Again, here as people started heavily using for SOA application, so it later to be service oriented. Okay, basically provides provide a basic messaging framework. Okay, it's like the SOAP is actually considered a successor to the XRPC. Okay, so a lot of applications like bloggers, they still use RPC or remote procedure calls. Okay, so both SOAP, SOAP and REST, so they all make use of standard internet protocol like HTTP and SMTP. So the basic infrastructure of your SOA application, SOA application or web services. So web services is actually a collective name all the different underlying technologies which are involved. So you have XML protocols like SOAP and WSDL. These are the XML protocols, and you have internet protocols or communication protocols like HTTP, SMTP, and FTP. So those are the basic protocols that are involved. So you have basically encoding or envelope protocols like SOAP, UDI, and WSL, and you have internet protocols like HTTP, STP, and FTP. Okay, it's not necessary that it has to stick to one single transaction protocol. So you can have web services which are via different messaging protocols like HTTP. HTTPS also is available. Okay, so
Suresh, one question over there. Like when you mention SMTP, how is that the implement? I mean, SMTP is used for sending across to another system, right? So cannot visualize how that look like. HTTP makes sense because we are used to that. So what stories or you have any example by which you can give?
Yeah, so I think even like some authentication web services are employed, they're using SMTP. So you can actually consider even Microsoft like Exchange Directory, they basically use the SOAP-based communication. So you can actually just check your mail and you can see that a lot of different SOAP-based requests in the background using the SMTP protocol. So
okay.
and they all use SOAP-based request and response. So some processing or information sharing is involved. So they can use any transportation protocol. FTP protocols are also, so you can actually send and receive messages or audio so as part of web services request and response. So in case if you have very heavy files, you can use FTP protocol as well. So
So like in HTTP that you try to access a URL, you can use an FTP URL and you do the same XML messaging between the URL and your client. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So it almost works the same way. So if you have heavy files, you can use FTP and you still have the messages attached with the files. So
okay. The Microsoft Exchange example is pretty good. I couldn't guess what you mean by the SMTP or web service. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So any questions? Okay. So there are different advantages of using SOAP-based web service. So SOAP-based services basically makes the communication between proxies and firewalls much easier. So earlier, we're trying to say that earlier technologies like XML RPC blocked by the firewall because any kind of harmful messages can actually occur through XML RPC. So a lot of different problem there if we are using some version of this kind of application communication. Right? So if you are using SOAP web service, it can always pass through files, and you can actually even go behind the proxy. So if you are using HTTP protocol, you don't have to worry about firewalls or any other technology which will prevent these applications from communicating with each other. If you're using SOAP-based web service, it's versatile. So using kind of different transportation protocols. Okay, so it's easy to consume. Not all, but at some it's pretty easy to consume, and it's very explicitly stated, right? So your file, it has very positive information about your service, so that makes the consumption a little easy. Uh, uh, in terms of data types, so it expects some kind of RITI or messaging protocols. So it expects you to adhere to the contract. So that's something which is that's an advantage. Okay, if you have any issue in terms of your spaces or defining your data types, so the parsing itself will show some error. So that is in terms of public application. You can be sure that work even if you every time. So that advantage. Advantage of SOAP-based services are a lot of different tools which are available ready for you to start work on your application based on the SOAP-based services technology. Okay, what have we discussed so far? Suresh? You guys?
I thought I got disconnected from audio because I was not hearing it.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Anybody else? So I hope that I am under the understanding that you guys are all from based technology and you have some familiarity in terms of XML. What is all these technologies that I'm talking about? So if like anything doesn't make any sense to some, you can just always stop me and ask me. Sure. Okay. Uh, so far about the different advantages and what are there are some fails also in the industry running web services. So we've been also discussing about different web services, right? So different types of web services in terms of SOAP-based web service, and you have REST-based web service. So we're looking at a common architecture of web. So we've seen what are all the different XML standards which are used. So they basically use SOAP, UDA, and WSDL. So these are the XML standards which are used in the REST. And apart from that, we also see different transportation protocols like HTTP, NTP, and FTP. So all these different transportation protocols. So use services. Okay. So in terms of advantages of web services over technologies, again, web services allow for very easier communication between proxies. So use with proxies and firewalls are solved by using the protocols used by web services. The web services are versatile, so they allow the use of different transportation protocols. Again, web services, since they have very detailed public files, so they make the data consumption a little more easier. Again, there is some visibility in terms of data types, and there is some kind of adherence to the contract. So it's actually just for the application developer. So there is some kind of consistency in what they can expect out of a web service. Again, since the web services are pretty mature, a lot of different organizations are there for supporting web services. So a lot of different development tools are available for developing or start the web service. Yeah.
So this is just one
Yeah.
question. I got confused with it. DL is required for every web service, right? Why do we put it as a separate thing, WSTAN protocol?
DL is not required for RESTful services. Okay. Services doesn't use WS, so they use something WADL. WADL is not mandatory thing. So for SOAP services, it's mandatory to have WSDL. So if WSDL is not there, SOAP-based will not work. But, yeah.
My question is basically like you gave a 4 categorization. First was SOAP, second was WSDL, third was UDDI, then RESTful, right? So the 4 not based on implementation, but the XML protocol based. There was yesterday you mentioned about it. So it's like that 3 can be clubbed together, right? I mean, SOAP and WSDL can be clubbed together. I mean, I didn't.
No, and these are XML. There are only 2 different kinds of web service. There is actually SOAP-based service and REST services. So this DL, WSDL, SOAP, and DDI, they all support SOAP-based services. And services, on the other hand, they really RESTful services doesn't really require any XML protocol. So they basically rely on very simple like transactions like create, read, update, delete. So they basically have one single line of code. That's why they don't rely on this XML protocol. So the different XML protocols that we see, right? Like SOAP, AWS, they are all associated with the SOAP-based services. So
categorized to XML. The other one is a separate one. That's what you're saying.
These are the XML protocols that are involved in this SOAP. SOAP is on XML protocol which is used by SOAP-based services. So there is no other way of calling SOAP-based services. So since they are also called big services. Okay. So, since they are using SOAP-based protocol, they are called base services. So base services, they basically use UDD WSDL format to enable the functioning of the web service. So for example, WSDL is a protocol with which they actually expose information about the methods that are being used by the web service. That is WSDL does. So it uses basically to index all the public web services around. So basically, if you have so just supposing that UST is having some kind of web services product and wanna let the world know about the web service. So what they do is that they submit their WSDL to a UDI admin. So it indexes our UST services to the appropriate category. So UDI is something with which actually enable the services technology with. So UDI is not a separate kind of service, it's some technology which will be enable your web service to function.
I have a confusion there. When you mean indexing, it's just categorizing and having public information that if you want to look into this category, you can take service from company or not. Is that what you are trying to mention?
Yeah, right. So yeah. So that technology UDD never caught because of this issue. Because
I got it.
Yeah, fine. So we're not going to focus much on UDDI. So we're going to focus on SOAP and WSDL, and this some brief will touch base on REST services also.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Suresh.
Okay. So anybody else have any questions? I've already discussed on the advantages of services. RESTful service is a kind of web service. Okay. So this basically stands for representational state transfer. Okay. So RESTful services, they're actually a collection of network architecture principles that outline how resources are defined and addressed. So basically, actually, way of this many or resources, application resources to the network URI. Okay. So what this basically means is that all resources can be uniquely identified by a URI. So there is no need for additional message layer like SOAP. Okay. Example, see all of your applications processing can be actually deconstructed into simple kind of operations, right? So, for example, all your complicated application process can actually be deconstructed into simple, much more elementary kind of processing. So, in your single app, if you're actually having one single process, you're doing 5 additions or 5 updates or 5 deletes. So, of these operations will give you one method. Right? So, instead of actually having multiple methods, running a service, so what you do is that they're actually deconstructed all these different methods into muscular operations, and each of these operations are unique identified with one single URL. Okay, so for example, for create there will be a URL, for update there will be a URL, for read there will be URL. Okay, all these different URLs will be mapped with one single operation. Either it be a create operation or it can be a date operation or a delete operation. So all these different operations will be have their own unique URI. So since they have their own unique UI, so there is no question in terms of which is the operation that I'm going to call if I am actually invoking this web service. So in that, there's no need for additional message layer like a SOAP. Okay, so basically here RESTful services and action basically interact with the resource by the identifier of the resource, and also it actually know the action which is required by the service. So these are the two different information that your app or the client which is consuming the services should understand and it should know. Okay, you don't have to worry. There's no need to know if there are caches and proxies or gateways or firewalls. So you don't worry about all these things. So all you worry about is you understand where have the identifier of the resource, which is the UI, and the action which is required by the URI. So these are the two information that you should know. Or actually very simple information. Usually, if you want to update something, you'll definitely know what is the information that you want to update, right? So you can actually just update only those fields and worry about all the different other things which are associated with the request response. Okay, the SOAP-based services, you might need to know what mandatory fields. You might have around many number of fields in the request. So not all the fields are really mandatory. You need to give mandatory fields. So fields might be optional on the scenario that you are trying to invoke the action with. The REST-based services, you don't have to worry about understanding what are the mandatory fields, what is the data type of the mandatory field, what are the information, what information, and what is the scenario that I'm gonna request or call the web service, which is the operation that I'm gonna call. You don't have to worry about any of these things. Operation is actually mapped to a particular UI or identifier of the resource, and you basically should understand which is what is the action which will be invoked on the service that particular information. So this is basically these two things are simple. So usually one of the disadvantages of RESTful service is that so actually trying to invoke an unknown service can be a little difficult for you unless and until you know the information about the service that you're going to invoke. So it's going to be possible for you to invoke. So that's actually a disadvantage. But again, in terms of advantage, since it's very lightweight, so you worry about encoding and decoding complicated XML protocols. Okay, so one has removed in terms of implementing the service. So it's actually very advantageous, especially for those constrained applications like mobile systems which have to access service. Okay, so if you're actually working on a mobile kind of a platform, so time you'll find it very difficult to encode your request with a lot of different XML protocols. So a very simple information it might be, but in terms of encoding it will take up system resources. So that is avoided if you are using RESTful services. And another feature of this RESTful application basically need to understand the format of the input returned also. So in terms of WSL, we're gonna let what is a WSL. This or a SOAP-based service one of the advantages of WSDL is that the response which are being returned by the web services, right? So you'll get information about response also. So you can actually expect, okay, this is the kind of responses that field that I'll get in the response. These are types of the fields. If I get an error code, the explanation of the error code will be there in the WSL. But if you're using RESTful services, this information should be static information. So you just change the information and publish it as a WSL. So that not, I'll not say it's a disadvantage, but this is some piece of a RESTful service the application needs to understand. Okay.
So Ritesh, can you explain that last part? I mean, the publishing part, what you mentioned, I didn't get
Okay.
it.
See, yes, if you're using a SOAP-based service, what happens is that you are WSDL, right? So if you look at WSDL, separate portion for response. Okay. So currently, my response is doing five different fields. Okay. So 5 fields are returned as a response message. Okay. So if I'm adding one more field or if I'm deleting one more field, okay, what all I need to do, I can straight away delete or add any number of fields that I want in the response by default, right? So when I actually deploy the web service, by default, the information about my response is updated in the WSDL. Right. Okay, since WSDL is present, information will be dynamically changed whenever I change some information about my web services operation. Change also in the WSDL. So when a external client or when an external application is trying to access my web service, right? So it will straight go to the WSDL. So we'll actually see that okay, one of the field is missing or one new field is updated. So according to that, it will actually change its processing logic. But using RESTful services, this kind of possibility is not there. So changing some information about my web services, right? So that will really create some impact on the application which is trying to access my REST services. Okay.
Okay. Understood. But the question over is, say if you change your WSDL file, and I use WSDL that you published yesterday for my client, and when I'm trying to consume it today, change it in the background for the WSDL kind of thing with SOAP. That I need to understand. So in case when I try to access it, will it return me an error when I'm trying to use it? Because say I use the old WSDL file to get a request to get the data from that web service, and you change it back today without knowing that I try to access that. So will you give me a error message straight away saying that something has changed, you will have to make a change accordingly?
If you're using this, if you're doing updates and if your consumer application is actually use the WSDL of your web service, right? So you're supposed to refactor the WSDL. So what happens? It will actually keep referring to the old WSDL. Okay. If there are changes which are done to the web service and the web services might be exposing the new WSDL, but your application might be still using the old WSDL. So you have to refactor your client side WSDL so that the changes are reflected.
But my question is, it's the same URL, right? Usually when they try to access the WSDL,
you are the same, but underlying WSDL will change.
Yeah, the old WSDL, if I try to create a client and try to access that, will it throws me an error? I mean, how does a person use the old WSDL file? Say, if I check WSDL today, I understand that it is changed, but with that, when they try to that, maybe it's a hypothetical situation, but I'm trying to understand whether it will be an error back to the old user who used it, saying that something changed, you will have to adjust accordingly. Is trying to convey?
Yeah, so it will create an error, but it again depends. So if the change which I've done is not it's not refilled or it's not easily impact, at that time it will not create an error or it will not give an error to you. But if change which is done is actually a mandatory field, then it will create an error.
It will throw. Okay, got it. Good. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Another question. So, the major difference between a SOAP-based service and a RESTful services. Okay. So again, there are advantages of using RESTful service. So again, RESTful service is a lightweight service. There's not a lot of XML markup is required. So again, a human readable result is by the web service. Okay. Again, if using the RESTful, they improve the response time and the loading characteristics. So it's very important, especially using those constrained application platforms, right? Like a mobile platform. Okay, so services basically improve improve the service scalability by reducing the need to make communication state. So basically, different services can use can be used.
Hello, Suresh, audio has gone. Hello? Hello?
King, I am just trying to ping him.
Oh, okay. Okay. When I'm thinking it's a problem with my mic or not, I was thinking whether I should reconnect or thanks.
Okay, and the recording has been resumed. Yes. Okay, so just share the presentation also. Okay, just discussing about RESTful services, right? So we just saw an advantages that REST services have. Okay, able to hear me? I think I'm hearing some noise. Okay, one second. I'm just try to through phone because my leader is having some call issue. Okay. Are you able to hear me? Hello.
Perfectly.
Okay. Okay. Let's look at the different advantages of RESTful web services, right? So, SOAP-based web services, right? So, web services are, I think, just went back to the first slide. I think SOAP-based services, as you know, right? SOAP-based services basically works on certain different XML protocols, right? It works on SOAP. SOAP is an XML protocol. It works UDI. UDI is again an XML protocol, and works on WSDL. Okay, so these are different XML protocols which are involved in services. So again, a lot of people might be already very familiar with XML technologies. So those who are not very familiar with XML, XML is basically XML is not extensible.
Good question. You were in the end of this lecture. Is it the next slide after that? I mean,
yeah. So actually, it basically goes back to the SOAP-based services. We already discussed about the SOAP-based services. Okay. So I think if we'll just go through these points. Versus
no, fine. Risha, I was just thinking like okay, 15 slides or in between or no. That's the reason. Maybe.
Actually, once you have just completed with the introduction about SOAP-based and RESTful services, again we are beginning to understand SOAP-based services in detail. So we'll speak about the different XML protocols that SOAP-based services has. So what are the meaning of all these XML protocols? So when you're going into detail again, few slides which are kind of repeating on certain things that we already touched on. Okay, just missed all this. So again, understanding XML is very important. So it's a few slides about what is XML. Okay, I'm sure that everybody already knows about XML. You must have already worked with XML. But if some of you are not familiar with XML, XML is simple. It basically stands for Executable Markup Language. Okay, so it is a markup language just like HTML. Wherever you focus on data and the formatting of the data, so XML is more like a user-defined markups or user-defined tags. Okay, tags are not predefined, so there are different defined XML tags. So there is no restriction as to what are the different types of XML tags you can have. Okay, so XML basically uses DTD or document type definition. You can either use a document type definition or you can use the XML schema. Okay, how you use it in HTML. So HTML also you can have a DTD, CSS, right? Cascading style sheet to describe what you are planning to represent HTML. So in the same way, you can have a DTD or you can have a schema to describe the data in the XML. Okay, and XML with DTD is self-descriptive. Okay, so if you are actually defining about XML in a DTD, what it means is that with XML file itself, all the different information about the different XML tags that you're using, right? So it will all be present in the single document. Okay. Again, a schema, you'll keep referring to external just like a URL or and the schema. Okay. So XML was designed to store, carry, describe, and exchange the data. So that's the basic objective of the XML. So XML was basically designed to store, carry, describe, and extract the data. So again, XML starts with a start tag. Okay, will end with a end tag. So but as XML. So again, XML follows like a tree structure. Okay, that you guys are aware of the XML tree structure. There's a root node and the multiple child nodes. Okay, so this is actually an example of an XML. So basically begins with a and it will basically end with a tag. Okay, so it's very case. So it's not like HTML. So I think HTML is not case sensitive. Current HTML, that is HTML5, is case sensitive. So previous versions of HTML didn't really bother whether it's actually adheres to particular. Okay, we can actually begin on XML, the HTML tag with the uppercase and end with the lowercase. It doesn't mind. This will still pass the information in the HTML. But not like that is case sensitive. So you just mismatch the open closing tag. So it will throw error during parsing. Like HTML, every start tag must have a matching end tag. So I think currently HTML5 basically implements the same goal. So HTML5 HI.0, it really requires you to end the tag. HTML XML elements can be nested. Okay, this is an example of a nested HTML element. Okay, so an example of both describing XML document. Okay, so this basically uses the DTD. Okay, document type definition. Okay, so you can actually see that both definition and encoding is actually explicitly mentioned here. Okay, again the XML are extensive. So if you want, you can add additional elements. So it doesn't matter. So if you're for example here you've seen an XML element called note. Yeah.
Suresh, one question. Like, how did you say that the first one is having a DT kind of thing? I could not understand that.
No, actually, no. So it's not referring to any outside schema. Okay. So here actually there is no requirement to actually any complicated schema, right? So basically, just having one single XML tag node. Okay. So, for example, if you have node 1 and node 2, so at that time you will have something called namespace. Okay. So, if the namespace is defined from within the single XML document, so it's actually document type definition. So it will not refer to any external schema. So, but if space, so here I'm not using namespace, so that's why that complexity itself is not right. So I don't have to define a namespace. So namespace is used, and if I'm defining the namespace from within the XML document, it will be a document definition DTD. Again, I'm not referring to any outside schema, so it's basically a DTD type. So it's actually a self-describing. This particular XML is a self-describing XML.
Okay. DTD is something like having an exclamation kind of thing or a weird kind of syntax, a different thing. So even if you don't have anything outside, then it's also an XML with DTD. Right?
Yeah. So not necessarily DTD. So DTD is if you are saying, you mean to say that my XML is DTD, that means that I have, if there should be a schema and I should be explaining that schema from within the XML document. So then I say that it's DTD. So here it's actually not any schema or namespace. So, but still it cannot be considered XML with schema also. So,
Okay, got it.
simple XML document. Yeah. So just to prove a point that it's a self-describing and can be extensible also. So when I'm saying extensible, so XML document, you can actually add a number of elements to your XML tag. So for example, here the two instances of the node XML tag, right? So in the first node XML tag, so there is node element, right? So in the second node XML tag, I just added a date element from inside the note element. So you can expand your XML or XML elements. Okay. XML elements can have attributes. So attributes are basically information. Okay. They can be stored in a child element or an attribute. Okay. An example of using attributes. So here, a person's this is actually described as an attribute to person XML, right? So if you look at this person XML element, the attribute is basically some property. So it can also be represented this way. So instead of this sex attribute to the person XML tag, so you can actually add this sex as a child element to the person XML tag. So this is the two ways. So both are equally effective. Okay, if you look at in terms of readability, it does have attributes, but in terms of highly formatted XML, it's advised to have child elements for XML tag for additional data.
Better go with child elements. That's what you're saying. Better representation.
So, yeah, code readability, it's better go for attributes, but in terms of application parsing, so for application to parse, it's better to have child elements. Okay, so it all depends on the number of elements. So if you have very less number of elements, it's better to add attributes. But number of information is quite huge, better to go for child elements to represent data. Okay, so these are tools of correctly well formed and valid XML. So actually correctly, but a well formed XML document has correct XML syntax. Okay, so whereas the second example of so here we have used something called DTD. So this is actually document type definition. Okay, so you need to actually define this DTD from within the XML element itself. So the here we are actually referring to a DTD called inter.dtd. So that is something you need to define in the XML document, but not define here. That doesn't matter. Just for our understanding, there are two different XML documents.
Suresh, one question. So in that thing, that XML should be actually large and should have that internal node.dt somewhere coming below that file. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Okay, got it.
Okay, yeah, sure. So again, some basic concepts about XML namespaces. In XML, like XML namespaces, there are a couple of different other concepts like XML encoding, XML parsers, XML CData. Okay, so XML namespace is again a way of it's something which is designed to provide a method to avoid elements and names. So for example, like we've seen yesterday, like an example of address. So if you have address, so if you have office address and home address, so these two addresses can have conflict elements. They both have street names, they both have country names, they both have person. All these different attributes or elements to both these information are almost the same. So you can actually use something called namespace. So that's we'll just see examples of namespaces. Okay, so XML encoding. XML encoding basically allows you to represent for extended or foreign characters. So for example, if you have at the or if you have line or minus, these kind of things will create some conflict in XML, right? Because they are actually used as to encode XML data itself. So you can actually use XML encoding. So most of the special characters, they have some code to represent that. So again, XML parsers is like to creating and manipulating an XML document. So we have so basically your different. They all have XML parsers. Even your browser has XML parsers. So browser will basically read an XML and try to represent them in a in actually readable manner. So that XML parsers are supposed to just access the information in the XML. Parsers do. C data provide a way to store data which is supposed to be ignored by the parser. Okay, so if we store this chunk of data as a C data, okay.
It's a question over there. In C data, you can actually set greater than, less than, that kind of special characters, right?
You can actually send this characters in C data. So usually it's advised to encode your special characters. So even if in your C data also, if you have some special characters, it's best advised to encode it.
I didn't catch why, or is it a best standard? I mean, standard.
No, the problem is that usually C data is usually ignored only, but basically it's best advised. So I've seen this as a practice. So really, it does not matter even if you have some special characters in C data. It's not it create any problem. But I've seen that programmers over a period of time. I've seen several programmers even entering special characters in C data also. Because in C data, I mean, it depends. So if you're actually just having some the comments, right? The comments doesn't matter. So the comments are usually, they don't care if you're encoding or decoding, but there are some what the programmers basically do. The entire SOAP message itself, they sometimes try to store it in C data. So in those cases, you can actually use encoding to hide special characters. Okay. These are some basic concepts regarding some very namespaces and encoding, parser, and C data. Okay. So the thing is associated with XML is something called XML cell. So actually, external style sheet language. So just like how CSS is to the HTML. So HTML, if you have common style, different HTML, you can actually encode your style in CSS or cast style sheets. So just how CSS is to HTML, we have something called XSL. That is actually extensible style sheet language. So this XML started its life as a way to discover XML documents should be displayed, but evolved into 3 different languages. We have XSLT, XML style sheet language, and XPath. So XPath is similar to your SQL. Okay, so just how you use SQL to navigate to different database columns and data in the database. So just like SQL is to databases, XPath is to the XML. Then you also have XSL F4, is a language for formatting the XML document. So XSL F4 is basically basically designed for tools which are manipulating the XML. So when people who are consuming web service, they don't really focus on XSL F4. But the most important thing is XSL and XPath. So XSL F4 is for trying to create a user interface for accessing web services and all. Okay, now all these are associated with XML. Okay, so XPath is similar to SQL. Okay, XPath is basically a language for finding information in a document. So if you XML document and if you want to locate other information, or if you want to locate a particular XML tag, and if you want to retrieve the value of that particular XML, you can use XPath. Okay, so basically used to navigate the elements and the attributes in the XML. So XPath also has a text for defining parts of an XML document. Okay, so XPath again exposes you to a library of standard functions. Again, XPath is a W3C standard. Okay, W3C standard which is used for accessing an XML document. Okay, so XPath follows the XPath mode. Okay, so in XPath XML, we'll see example of XPath. Don't worry about it. I think it will be much more clearer to you if I use an example of the XPath. Okay, so XPath is in the basically XML documents are treated as notes. Okay. So further discuss about XML XPath and all. I think we are nearing the end of our time for session. You guys have any other questions? For a lot of interesting questions came up today, so it was very cool to have these questions. Some concepts were clearer once we had these questions. So that good questions. And so we can since we're running out of the time for today's session, so we'll be continuing on the basic background technologies on SOAP-based services also. So basically today we have seen basically two different types of services we have seen. So we've seen the differences between SOAP-based services and REST-based services. So we just got started with that protocol. So there are a couple of different XML protocols for the SOAP services. That is actually nothing but a SOAP, simple access protocol, and web description. That is actually the WPL. And apart from that, we've also seen there is something UDT. So all these are associated with your SOAP-based services or big services. So services are almost 80 to 90% of your web services implementations are based on SOAP-based services. So when you're talking about SOAP-based services, the important thing is XML. Okay. So all protocols for SOAP-based services, that is actually SOAP or WSTL or UDL, they are all defined in XML. It's very important you understand certain terminologies regarding XML. So you need to understand what is XSL, what is XPath, what is XSLT. So the basic difference between all these different terminologies, what is document type definition, what is XML schema, what is name. So it's really important that you understand these concepts. So it will be very easy for you to basically create a services application, and even if there's an issue, you can debug things much more easily. So if you guys have any questions, you can ask me. So we're nearing the end of the session for today. So in case you have any questions at any point of time, also you can just send out an email.
Suresh, our last question before. Yeah. XPath, you said that it's equivalent to SQL for identifying the data. So you can just query kind of thing in XPath. Actually, I'm hearing for the first time. So when you use XML, just curious, like you have query kind of thing that you can do with XPath to get to create a big XML which is having like thousands of lines. You can use the XPath to get to a particular position. Is that what you are trying to say?
Definitely.
So
even something called they have something called XQuery also. If you want if you want some kind of indexing also, you can do with XQuery.
Right.
Okay. For example, you have some repeating elements and you want to sort the elements, and all these things are possible using XQuery. You can use the same kind of logic also. So whatever you use as a SQL, right? So for example, SQL you will be actually in conditions for filtering there. So same thing you can use in XPath also.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. If you want some additional resources, I can share you. If you want regarding XPath or XQuery resources, I can share you.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know your UID. I can, otherwise I can send you an email so that.
Yeah, sure, no issue. So you can find my UID in the meeting request.
Okay.
Send an email to me separately. Reply with the resources that you want.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. So we'll see more. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye.
Yeah.